Hello and welcome to this special edition of Focus On. I'm Kenneth Ibomo, and on this special, our spotlight is on Presco Plc, a fully integrated agro-industrial company that specializes in the cultivation, extraction, and refining of crude palm oil. The journey takes us to the outskirts of Benin City in Nigeria, to the Obaretin Estate, where we'll find out about Presco Plc's expansion plans and the progress of their debut 50 billion naira bond issuance program. As the fifth oil palm producer in the world, Nigeria still has a huge local demand to meet. In the fourth quarter of 2021 alone, crude oil palm was the 12th largest item imported into Nigeria, and the imports were valued at 48.8 billion naira. For local oil palm producers, this vacuum creates a lot of room for local expansion.
As you know, there is a persistent shortage of CPO in Nigeria. At any point in time, the annual shortage is anywhere between 800,000 metric tons to 1.2 million metric tons. And it would be very great, even with government is interested, government is doing what it should do, to promote policies. And then we also know there are CBN contributions to oil palm development in terms of the financing that is out there, which is very necessary, albeit not sufficient. Now, with all those efforts and all that, one thing is that the oil palm industry is an industry that has very high barriers to entry. It's also a very long gestation period business. So that accounts for the very low entry rates into the industry. But what we then see is that the question is, now, if that is the case, when will Nigeria come to the point where you say you are able to meet 100% local demand and probably be a net exporter of palm oil? It's a very, very, very long time from now. So where do people like Presco find themselves? Where we find ourselves is that because of the fundamentals that we have, because of the expertise and the opportunity that is in the marketplace, our decision is to continue to expand our business so that we continue to produce more and more palm oil, to at least for import substitution, to reduce the shortage as much as we can.
For the moment we have a situation where we have never seen a price rise as it is today. That is the first we ever met and of that nature. What will be the future we can't know. It all depends. It's a free market where you have free production of vegetable oil, where palm oil is part of. It looks promising, but how far it goes we don't know. It looks good, and why in general, even if prices go to a lower level, it's still a profitable business. It's a food business, and people have to continue to eat, and that's why we are confident in the future.
Presco has a lot to offer. The Nigerian oil palm industry has a lot to offer. It's a huge employment of people, and also the landmark, that the areas that we capture. And I think the technology is growing. We've got incredible people that we're daily uncovering in our processes, not only in the agricultural sector, but also in the technical sector within our processing units. It offers, as I just mentioned, lots of employment opportunities, reaching out to communities. Our footprint is wide within Edo and Delta State, and it will continue to do so. We have great collaboration from government on all aspects, federal and state government. And without that collaboration, there's obviously huge growth. So we're looking very forward to the future of the palm industry, oil palm industry, as I said, not only in the agricultural sector, but also on the processing side as well.
Presco is looking to expand its operations with some ambitious plans and an acquisition in the works. To do this, the oil palm refiner set its eyes on Nigeria's debt capital market with a debut 50 billion naira bond issuance program. To get the bond program going, Presco Plc is looking to old partnerships to build the right team.
We made our assessments. As you know, we're already on the stock exchange and Presco has become quite visible. Not only that, we have started to deliver very strong results, and many opportunities came and we needed the right type of capital to be able to execute the transaction that we had in mind. Of course, the debt capital market was the best option. Short of equity, the best capital market was the next option. And that's what led us to that. And then, of course, the next thing was to choose the parties with whom we can go and do that. In Stanbic IBTC, of course, their reputation, is out there. But more importantly is that 2 decades ago, when we wanted to launch our IPO, they were the firm, even though we tried to talk to about 2 or 3 other advisors. After we spoke with Stanbic IBTC at that time and sat down to look at the story, they were the ones that came out with a credible roadmap that can allow us to achieve our results. And we achieved a very, very good result at that time. So now that we are heading back to the debt capital, they were, of course, a go-to advisory firm. And what we discussed with them to now look at, Nigeria is well populated with fantastic advisory firms. So when we were now choosing who to partner with them, of course, we had done a bridge to bond before, and one of them was already in the bridge to bond transactions. It was a natural, inclusion. And the third one was also because they were part of them, where they were part of those who had gone on the journey of the first IPO with us. So we already knew, and they knew us very well. They've known us almost from the cradle, and therefore they also had what it takes to be able to understand our story that they already know and then apply it in the transaction.
This relationship is probably over 2 decades ago. I first met Mr. Nwambuku, the CEO, in 2000. He walked up to our offices in Walter Carrington and wanted us to assist him raise some capital, equity capital for the expansion, and worked closely with him and Mr. Vanderbeek. And we did a series of transactions. First did a private placement, and then took the company public by doing an IPO in 2001, which was, at that time successful. And, have kept in touch with the company over the years. Obviously, being part of a banking group, we've, provided the company with funding, had, research coverage of the company, etc., etc. I think in every company's life cycle, you kind of start off, you do a private placement, you get public, you're funded with bank debt. And it gets to a point in your life cycle where ideally you should be going back to the public, to the capital markets to access debt funding. Because on one hand, you've got investors who are participating in your equity story. So we usually say to companies after, you built a base to, tap the capital markets. We thought that, the timing would be perfect around February, March, given the liquidity in the system. And, had started speaking to the company. The company was looking to acquire, to make an acquisition, acquire 100% of SEAT Group. And we thought, the best way to fund that on a long-term basis was to come to the capital markets and issue a bond. Ended up deciding, well, the February-March window was optimal and, hit the market.
The journey with Presco started about 20 years ago. Then I was a very young investment banking analyst, and this was actually the first company that I worked with to take from being a private company all the way to an initial public offering. At the time, we sought to raise about 750 million from the market, which we eventually succeeded at, but it was quite tough because at that time the institutional investor market was still very largely undeveloped. So whenever we worked on capital raising transactions, we had to go to a lot of high net worth individuals. So we had to have physical roadshows with high net worth individuals in cities that we felt there were enough people connected to either the company or there were enough investors in that city. So we did, for Presco in particular, we started with a roadshow here in Benin and then in Warri, as well as Sapele. Then eventually we did Lagos and Abuja, which were areas we normally covered at the time. We succeeded at raising the capital. The company was then listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange at the time at 5 naira per share, immediately after the IPO. And since then, we've just seen the company grow from strength to strength. Okay, the bond transaction started sometime in 2021. Presco was doing an acquisition and they needed a bridge finance to complete that acquisition, which was, at the time, the bridge was provided by Stanbic, IBTC and Zenith Bank. So subsequent to that bridge, a bond was put together to refinance the bridge acquisition. So we came to the market to raise about 30 billion. Cardinal Stone's role in the bond issue was the role of joint issuing house, which we played creditably well.
Quantum Zenith, we are an investment banking firm, an affiliate of Zenith Bank PLC, one of Africa's biggest bank. So the bank, our affiliate, was involved in the bridge finance facility. And by extension, because of our collaboration, while the bank provides commercial banking services, we provide investment banking services. And because there was a commercial banking aspect of the transaction and an investment banking aspect, which is supposed to take out the commercial banking side, then the bank started it, and then it was just natural for Quantum Zenith to come in and conclude the investment banking part.
At the signing ceremony of the successful issuance of the 34.5 billion naira Series 1 7-year fixed-rate bonds, the issue was 247% subscribed and priced at a coupon rate of 12.85%.
Thank you, Fusho, for recalling, the start of the journey with yourselves. Was this morning, I had a call with Mr. Van der Beek, and then that call was just to say to him that something akin to what happened some 2 decades ago is also going to happen today, when we decided to have the initial public offer, and it is indeed true. And I remember vividly on that day when I walked through your doors, at the office where you are now, and then told the story. I remember very clearly what happened on that day was that when I said, I've come to talk about this, then Atido Peter's side had come to say, tell us your story. And then Shola was there. So I told the story, and Peter said, Peter's side said, sounds like a good story. So let's follow it up. And then the outcome was a very successful IPO. Very, very successful IPO. And here we are again 2 decades after that. We also have contacted yourselves and said we want to go to the debt capital market. And then you have jumped onto it, leveraging on the relationship that we all built together in the past. And then again today we have delivered a very successful debt capital market appearance. And I want to thank Cardinal Stone. When I spoke to Mike, and then Mike said, yes, we would like to be part of this. And then, of course, in the course of the bridge to bond, Quantum Zenith also said they will be there if also they will be allowed to be part of this race. But what we have seen is that the combination of the expertise, of the 3 financial advisory houses, that also was able to bring on board, a cream of professionals in terms of other parties that worked on the program. One of whom is here today, Ablai Taiwan and Co, and the rest that are not here, have helped to deliver the success that we have achieved. But I also want to take a step back and say a very big thank you to the management and staff of Presco Plc. The dogging. They were never tired of having those meetings that you just mentioned. And I remember very well that we would just whisper amongst ourselves and say, look, Laji will say, are you available to have a call in the next 30 minutes? I know that he was being as polite and as humble as he can be, but I know that what he was actually saying is that come onto a meeting in the next 30 minutes.
The board and management of SEAT and Presco made this job extremely easy. I mean, I've worked with many teams in my career, and I haven't seen one that, the attention to the detail and the preparation, the resources you threw at this. There were calls on weekends, multiple conference calls, multiple discussions. And the outcome of that was, and also, I mean, if you look at Presco's results, leading to the bond issuance, you had delivered strong quarter-on-quarter performance. So where, somebody mentioned the other day that could this be luck? And I'm like, no, this is not luck actually. This is where preparedness and timing, come together. So, this is a landmark transaction. You sought out to raise 30 billion. We closed the books. If you wanted to take close to 70 billion at the same pricing, 12.85, we had the orders in there. Had to scale investors back to about 60%. And more importantly, you had a perfect universe of investors that comprised the leading pension funds, the leading asset managers, etc. So, this is a landmark transaction, and, the board and management of SEAT and Presco, you really should be proud of what you've achieved. Hopefully it's the first of many. Investors would certainly look forward to, participating in your equity story, in, funding, providing debt capital for your next phase of growth.
This history just kind of underscores something that happened in the course of the transaction. The penultimate day to the close of the transaction, when the figures that we had is not at all reflective of where we ended. But something that struck me in that meeting, before that meeting, maybe because I was a new kid, I was like, how are we going to face Presco and tell them this is where we are, as at today? But in the course of the meeting, everybody from Presco, they were calm. IBTC, Stanbic, my colleagues, professional colleagues, they were calm. I was just watching on the team's meeting. I was like, everybody appears to be calm. Nobody, And at the end of the day, the story is just like the story of 20 years ago. So clearly, everybody was calm because there's a track record, and there is belief that what they've done before, they will even do more than what they did. So I'll just go straight to the transaction, which you already know. The issuer is Presco. They have a bond program for 50 billion, and the Series 1 issuance was meant to raise 30 billion, but they exercised the green shoe option, which allowed them to raise an additional 15%. So that's why we have a total figure of about 34.5 billion. The bonds are fixed rate senior unsecured bonds for a 7-year tenure, out of which 3 years is a moratorium on principal, and after 5 years, they have call options which are subject to certain conditions as stated in the bond documents. The coupon rate, as Function mentioned, is 12.85, which if you get 12.85 as a corporate, for a 7-year money or 5 to 7 year money, then I think that can go a long way, in influencing your bottom line positively. Then it's going to be listed on the NGS, the Nigeria Stock Exchange, and also the FMDQ. Presco is well known; it's a public company. But one thing that strikes me in this transaction that I love is the fact that about 99.6% of the investors for these bonds are qualified institutional investors. Once you have institutional investors practically taking up all your instruments, what that demonstrates is that means they believe in your future.
The company has done extremely well. A few weeks ago, I was talking to Mr. Nwabuko, and we went through some of the matrix, the performance of the company in the last 5, 6, 7 years. The planted area, the refinery outputs or capacity, and we were seeing a lot of growth. But those growth numbers are what companies and investment bankers, like some of my colleagues in the room, that's what they talk to the market about. I usually try and focus on how did the investors benefit? The people are actually convinced to part with their money that they could have spent on themselves to put in those instruments. How do they actually benefit? And we found out that Presco has actually been one of the highest performance, or the company that has produced one of the highest returns in the market over the last 20 years. It's incredible because this is coming from a sector where people don't pay that much attention to, right? I was having a call last night here with the chairman of one of our subsidiaries and he said, "Oh, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Presco." And he just screamed, "Oh, lots of dividends." That was his remark. That he just remembers the company for his lots of dividends. So I think where we are today, Series 1 completed, we're very thankful to the management of Presco and SIAD Group for giving us the opportunity to be part of this. We're also very thankful to Stanbic and Quantum Zenith because they had been in the transaction ahead from the bridge finance stage and they allowed us come in eventually. Funsho, thank you very much because we've been able to keep the team from 20 years ago. And to the rest of the Presco management team, we believe that this is just the beginning. What you've done over the last 20 years, the market is expecting more. So do not rest on your oars. Let's continue to deliver value to the various stakeholders of the group.
After the signing ceremony, we had an exchange of questions between the chief executive of Stanbic IBTC Capital, whose firm acted as the leading issuing house to this bond issue, and also Presco's managing director, Felix Nwabuko, had some questions as well.
Yeah, Mr. Nwabuko, this is such a beautiful place. I don't want to leave. So, but tell me, in terms of your Presco PLC, what's next, strategy-wise?
Well, we continue to pursue our core strategy. We've just developed ahead of this debt capital raise, we developed our 10-year business plan, 2021 to 2030. And the heart of that business plan, explains our strategy, which is an expansion, take advantage of the opportunities that is in the sector where we operate and in the marketplace. So for that, our major strategic thrust is the increase in the plantation development, plant more hectares. This year we hope to do 2,000. We hope to do 2,000 over the next couple of years. Land availability, finance availability, we have to do that. And of course, part of this transaction was to finance the acquisition. So we will invest really into that particular entity to turn it around again and make it a hugely successful oil palm plantation, oil palm company in Nigeria. That tomorrow, when you begin to count the like of Presco and Okomu on that, you will begin to identify that particular entity as one of the oil palm majors in Nigeria. Added to that also, as we push the expansion of the oil palm plantation, we also push the expansion of our processing capacities. We have seen in the course of this, the value that has been delivered through the commissioning of our new 500 metric ton per day refinery. So we will continue to up that, and because of the increased yields of fresh fruit bunches that we are now beginning to see and continue to see over the years to come, we are now going to build another mill on one of our estates, another 60-ton mill. So this is our core strategy. Around that will also be the expansion of our capability to produce green energy. As you know, on the average every year, our green energy production and utilization is 85%. Mm-hmm. So with the biomass, more biomass that comes from the increased production, so that gives us the opportunity also step up on our green energy production. Those are the other pillars that surround our strategic trust.
Fantastic.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
but also speaking to Poster earlier,
yes.
on this transaction, quite a lot has happened here.
Yes.
But I'd like to know if you have any questions for him on how this went and how you just take it away.
Yes, obviously, Funsho. Once again, I want to thank the Stanbic IBTC team, and this time around, working with Cardinal Stone and Quantum Zenith to deliver the results that we have had in this debt capital raise. My question is, we are on this side doing the things that we need to do. You are on that side doing the things that you needed to do. Tell us a little bit of your experience in, along the way.
Yeah, so I think I would summarize it by saying that as a management team, right, you give this 110% of your attention. And what you find is that people underestimate how much work it is to come to the capital market. More importantly, communicate your story, communicate how the funds you're going to raise from the capital market would affect your bottom line. And I think your team, right, spent hours and hours of pre-work. I think you were able to engage in investors, communicate exactly what you're trying to do. It also helped that for the past couple of quarters you've also delivered strong growth. So what you were saying to investors, what you say to investors, the investors come back next quarter and they can see the results. So for us, it was easy. We had the easy job. All right, you guys really did a huge amount of work, and for us, it was a pleasure, again, working with your team 2 decades after, and just seeing how much work you've put into the business.
This brings us to the end of the special edition of Focus On, where Nigerian institutional investors showed a strong appetite for Nigeria's agro-industrial sector. I'm Kenneth Igbomo. Enjoy the rest of your day.